right now, if you really dig into how companies plot for growth, a lot of guesswork, a lot of top down, a lot of saying, hey, we want to be a rule of 40 company. We want to be 20% profitability and 20% growth. Go, right? Like, but instead there's really no connection to how you're growing. It's not rational. So you set false expectations or unmeetable expectations, or maybe you set low expectations, and then everyone thinks they're doing a great job, and they can be doing even better if they put some work behind it, right? So it's really about creating a much more, what I would say, kind of rationalized and aligned full journey orchestration of engagement that we just aren't seeing out there today.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm super excited to be here today with Martin Schneider, who's the head of research and chief evangelist at Annuitas. And so to start off with, Martin, I wanted to get the sort of elevator pitch for Annuitas. In B2B, we use so many acronyms that sometimes people who are new to marketing, especially B2B marketing, are like, so what exactly do you do? So what's the sort of elevator pitch for just the day-to-day marketer who hasn't really gotten deep into B2B yet?
Sure. So, and I'll try to use zero acronyms.
That's really hard for us.
Right. So essentially, Annuitas is think of it as a management consultancy that's solely focused on go-to-market, right? So really about creating those transformational projects, both strategy, deployment, and even optimization, let's call it, for large businesses who are trying to just kind of really just change for the modern demands of go-to-market in what we would call a converged growth approach. So much of marketing has been around that, pre-sale. It's about leads, it's about conversions, but not really about growth and lift and things like that. So we're really trying to kind of change some hearts and minds, and obviously change a lot of approaches to go-to-market. I have done about 100 plus go-to-market transformations for enterprises that most people have heard of, and I've been around for about 10 years. And it's just that type of consultancy with a really nice laser focus, and coming from both the go-to-market side myself, as well as being a former analyst, coming back together with CEO Adam Needles was really kind of a no-brainer for me when I was looking for a new challenge. So it's been an awesome 5 months, I think, that I've been back, and we've just been doing a lot of really cool stuff. So I'm really excited. And Annuitas is, we're just growing because there's so much demand for this. So many people need to rethink their go-to-market.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is even within the industry, there doesn't seem to even be a consistent definition of where go-to-market begins and ends.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously at the very strategic level, you can sort of understand what go-to-market is, but some people don't understand, is it, how far into the upper funnel does it extend? How much into product market fit does it extend? How much into the overlap into, lead gen, lead qualification, system processing around what the salespeople are doing at the various levels. Like, where do you put the boundaries on go-to-market, or GTM, as they might call it in B2B?
Yeah, we can get back into acronyms if we're safe.
Exactly.
Now. So I'm pretty broad, right? Because coming from, running go-to-market for a lot of tech companies, I tried to be as involved in product, both from, let's call it product management, as well as engineering, as, more so than most marketers, I think, because again, what are people going to use, right? What are you actually selling, right? So sales has its place, and your chief revenue officer has their place, or whatever their title may be. Marketing, and in terms of like the actual, what I would call demand generation side of things. And then there's product marketing, there's product management, but all these things need to be aligned, because if you're not at least creating solid feedback loops with the product you're bringing to market, that you're going to market with, you're going to have gaps, you're going to have misalignment, you're going to miss targets. So having that understanding, and a lot of, there are far too many CMOs who do not talk to product leaders, right? Out there. That's across tech, that's across multiple industries. to their detriment. They're really missing opportunities to learn, to rethink, and to create this, much more symbiotic relationship. So I think it's really broad. So in short, I take a really broad approach to go to market, where I think of it as, product is very much involved, and it really is a full cycle, and obviously very repeating cycle. So I'm pretty broad with my definition, and we focus primarily on that alignment of pre-sale and post-sale. And product may or may not be well involved in that, and a lot of our early strategy with that. But it's definitely on the mindset, right, of getting, like I said, that converged growth lens, bringing everybody into it, thinking of that kind of like infinity loop that is the kind of B2B relationship. You want to keep that customer for life, right, rather than just like random acts, random transactions, and really think of it as a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, LTV is key in B2B, right? The longer you keep them, the more money you make from them. That's super holistic, your approach. I like that.
Yeah, but so many people ignore that. Or it's not that they ignore it. It's just they don't know how to strategize for it. They don't build process. They don't put the right people on the right jobs to be done. They don't think of the milestones along the customer journey. There's so many people are still a lot of like a lot of inside out, not outside in, when they come to think about what is the customer relationship? What's their journey? What do they need? When do they need it? They don't really think about that. They're still, marketing leaders are still very much focused on like leads and conversions and what they hand off to sales. And they think I've done a great job, but well, what's the end result? Did you really do a great job? Because if you're not understanding these relationships, you really, especially when it's people you've talked to and probably sold to a lot of times before, how is sales missing the mark? How are you guys not working together, right? Because that alignment is pretty unattainable when you think about it that way, right? When you think about it in those old ways of like, marketing team to do our job, we're going to kick it over to you. Good luck. If you don't have that, that visibility into like what I would call the customer data value chain to really understand that of like, not only where are they in this, let's call it opportunity cycle, but where have they been? What do they do? Who are they like? Who are literally the individuals that we should be talking to, and why aren't we, right? And being able for sales and marketing and even success and product to come together to talk about that, as much as possible, as feasibly possible, given all the other jobs you got to do. It's a different mindset, but you got to get there because the people who do that well way outperform their competition,
Yeah, I would imagine so. Well, you were at the Ignite B2B conference in Chicago, and so was I, and I got a chance to see your presentation, which was transforming your go-to-market strategy through a converged growth lens. So if you have to boil that down into its essence, like what you presented, what would sort of your synopsis be of that presentation?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's sales and marketing alignment in the traditional sense is, I wouldn't say it's broken, it just never was, right? Because just like what I just described, like you can't just throw things over the wall and turn your back away and then focus on the next batch of leads, right? Or for the next quarter or the next month. So you really need to be thinking of, like I said, full journey orchestration of engagement where and realigning your even some of your organizational kind of, let's call it hierarchies and jobs to be done and focus on understanding. It might be an overlay. It's not necessarily changing everything. It can be evolutionary, not revolutionary. And thinking about that from that full journey and really joining up pre-sale milestones with post-sale milestones in that journey and understanding who are the personas, what are the channels, what is the content, what are the pain points, what do they need, and really building what we call a conversation track architecture, right? Really where it's like, it's kind of the 80-20, right? Like you kind of know in B2B, what is your buying kind of cycle? I wouldn't call it seasonality, but let's call it cadences. Who are your personas, both pre and post sale, and go to market, which, that demand experience needs to extend way far down the journey. Too many times it stops at, we close the deal, marketing's job is done, right? Sales job kind of done, depending on how they interlock with customer success, right? And that's really bad because there's like really long parts of the journey that get ignored where that you can actually support. Because when people talk about nurture, right, the concept of nurture, they really just mean people who didn't buy, and we throw them in a bucket and we email them some, like our worst content once every 30 or 60 days. That's a horrible approach to nurture, and high double-digit percentage of companies, that's their nurture strategy. But instead, you really need to think of it as who bought from, like full cycle nurture is, especially in B2B, it's like if you've sold to these people before, you need to continue to, make sure that onboarding of what you've sold before and what you've done and usage and blah, 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 all those things are actually done. your champions are supported and they feel, empowered and they feel educated and they feel confident that you are the trusted advisor for whatever product, service, whatever it is you're selling, so that they keep coming back, but that they're also, you're always top of mind, right? And it's not about spamming them or ignoring them when it's relevant and it's aligned, like that conversation track architecture, like I call it. And you have to do some research for that into how you do business with your customers, right? Once you build that for the full cycle, your lift becomes incredible because your renewals and your upsells, I mean, they're not, assumed, but they're close to that, right? It becomes your deal to lose, so to speak, in terms of the renewal and the and add and additional stuff, because you're actually aligning with their pain points, you're understanding them, and you're right there ahead of time, if not right time, right? And that's, so many people don't do that at all or not well, because like I said, they do very like spotty nurture or barely any nurture, and it's not relevant. And again, it just becomes like almost like what was that weird app, chat roulette, right? It becomes this kind of like randomly pick a piece of content and throw it to them because it's been 60 days, or here's our newsletter. And how is it aligned with anything? They try to make it too topical about, major world events or something like that. It's like, how does that have anything to do with what their industry is and what they need? And it's tough, for like horizontal providers to do that well, but you have to really think about that journey, make it outside in, and stop those, what we call random acts of marketing of like, well, we're going to do a campaign because we're low on leads. No, it's build a perpetual growth engine and you'll never be low on leads, because in B2B, you kind of know who you're going to do business with. It always made me laugh that B2B and ABM seemed to be like, account-based marketing seemed to be like this new crazy idea. And I'm like, this is what we should have been doing forever. It's like, you know who your target market is. If you don't know your TAM, then how are you in business in B2B, right? So it's like, you should pretty much know by name your top, 100 targets, 200, 300, 400, enough to at least, power a traditional ABM strategy for a long time. So it's kind of, so kind of getting away from those buzzy things and thinking about, converged growth and managed by a chief growth officer is really about taking what I would call a shared growth plan by multiple stakeholders, which could be marketing, sales, success, support, product, and putting accountability, predictability, scalability, all those things into it. That right now, if you really dig into how companies plot for growth, a lot of guesswork, a lot of top down, a lot of saying, hey, we want to be a rule of 40 company. We want to be 20% profitability and 20% growth. Go, right? But instead there's really no connection to how you're growing. It's not rational. So you set false expectations or unmeetable expectations, or maybe you set low expectations, and then everyone thinks they're doing a great job and they can be doing even better if they put some work behind it, right? So it's really about creating a much more, what I would say, kind of rationalized and aligned full journey orchestration of engagement that we just aren't seeing out there today. I think it's 5 to 15% of companies really have really good pre and post sale alignment of the engagement cycle. That's critically low, right? So there's a lot of meat on the bone, so to speak, in terms of going out there, for us at least, to go out and help companies rethink their whole go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, there's a tangential question to that because, obviously sales management as well as marketing management, right? Just to keep themselves sane, they like to use KPIs, right? To sort of focus around meeting specific KPIs. But often the KPIs are not nuanced in that they don't really reflect the difference between a power customer who could be in the 20% that generate 80% of the profit, or they just could be an average lead, right? And how does the rejiggering of the go-to-market strategy feed back into the sales and marketing team to allow them to double down on those Glengarry leads, for lack of a better term?
Right. Leads are good. No, it's, that's like the big question, right? And that's because I would say it's either the issues are wrong metrics or lazy metrics, right?
Yeah.
And when you get into this bandwidth of both, usually, because a lot of sales leaders, they're not analysts, they're not data scientists, and the dashboards that get made for them, they don't even know what to ask for to do it right sometimes. And they kind of know what they want. And then marketing is so focused on like leads and conversions that they're really busy with like that part of the dashboard of like, just turning that. So they don't take a step back. But to your point, exactly. Looking at the metrics, we need to rethink the KPIs that really matter. And there's like 4 of them. You don't need like It's really kind of like, well, what is the contribution to lift, right? That things are going, because you said that 20% that generate 80%. Well, how does success play in and have a really critical role in contributing to growth from that department and taking that contribution and holding them accountable? Well, what is sales looking at early on, but then looking backwards? Because sales, it's very strange. Sales looks very much now and what's the end of the quarter or year. A lot of times they don't take the time to look back and actually find patterns that you don't need AI for. I mean, AI makes it super easy and other analysis of reporting. Because some people think of it's analytics. It's not analytics, it's reporting that most salespeople have looked at. So what they don't have a good ability to do is look back and find trends and patterns to then learn for the future. Right? Who are our best customers? What are the attributes that align with the shortest sales cycles that we had? And what are those cohorts and coefficients that you kind of described, right? And they don't do that, right? Because it becomes a lot of times like a push-pull with marketing for like how many leads we're getting or this, that. It becomes, I just want to fill the pipeline to 5x quota, and we're at 2.5 right now. So just throw anything in, and look, these are real problems that they deal with, and they're held, that's what they're held accountable for, rather than it's like, take steps back, look at the past, learn from the past, align other departments who can actually contribute to that. Like I said, that customer data value chain that's going to identify a shorter, faster, easier, better path to making your numbers, but also realize that maybe your numbers are arbitrary, right? Because like, if you're not really looking at that past and you're just saying, well, we want to do 20% quarter over quarter growth, why? What's proving that that's possible, right? Is the industry, is your sector, are your competitors proving that out to you? And what is that? Because then you could look at product and say, what is our gap analysis? Why, like if this company is if they're a public company saying they're doing 30% growth and we're doing 15, well, why is that? Well, what are they serving? What are they looking at? So product can start to say, yeah, well, we feel product management, product have come together and said, these are gaps and we're losing deals because people are actually filling out the CRM and we're learning about why we lost the deal. And then you know what I'm saying, where you can actually start to figure those things out. Nobody does that type of, it's that full cycle kind of, and learning from those metrics and looking at the past to get better at the future. It becomes these kind of, like you said, these kind of like meta numbers. They look at conversion rates, they look at a couple things, and they worry over those things, and they should, but then they don't think about, they're symptomatic, not curing diseases, right? Yeah. And that's the problem. So you really need to rethink the KPIs. In the book that Adam and I are co-authoring, we have a whole chapter on like rethinking the KPIs for that converged growth concept that I talk about, because the cool thing is like you get more people to be accountable. You know what I mean? Like it's not just on sales. It's not just on marketing, right? When you actually create a shared growth plan that is rational and is kind of bottoms up and says, how can we contribute? How can we all contribute based on the data that we have and the understanding we have of the customer journey and customer history and things like that and likelihoods? You can set goals that are actually achievable, because at the end of the day, it's like, if you really want to run a business where people are happy, and people stick around and the customers are happy, it's like, you don't just squeeze your customers, you don't just overwork your employees to get to these arbitrary numbers you made up because you feel like that's the industry standard for growth. You align with what you do well, the customers you do well with, and you figure it out that way. And surprisingly, you get better and better and better iteratively, right? And that's a way to kind of rethink even, so I'm saying this is organizational, this is management, this is all these things, because it gets better at every phase when you do it this way versus the old way of just pushing down arbitrary numbers, overworking people, getting people stressed out, burning them out. And then what do you have? People either quit, or because you keep missing your numbers, someone tells you have to fire people. It's a bad cycle, right? Yeah. So this kind of concept has even like legs of like benevolent cycles beyond that, because you're taking a rational approach where people are doing their jobs that they like to do well, and they're getting, praised for it because they're actually executing on what you expected them to do, because it's realistic, it's not arbitrary. So it's a really kind of different way of thinking that I think is refreshing, that I think is needed, especially after what we've seen over the last 6 months, right? It's been crazy, especially in tech, right?
Yeah. One of my favorite takeaways from your presentation at Ignite was the fact that, as you've added sort of an efficiency layer by refining your go-to-market strategy, that actually gives marketing two options, because it allows them to either execute against marketing austerity, meaning I was actually wasting my money chasing a whole bunch of leads and placing a whole bunch of media where it really didn't bring in our kind of power customers, so they could probably do the same or better with 30% less, right? Or if they want to double down on growth, they can then actually say, oh, because our LTV is higher, because we're nurturing our customers and our cross-sell is higher, I can actually afford higher KPIs than I could 6 months ago, right? I can afford to pay more for a great lead than I could afford 6 months ago to pay for a crap lead, right?
No, exactly.
That feeds back into the marketing engine, right? And for me, I'm all about marketing efficiency, marketing austerity. So that was my takeaway. Like, okay, great. By you making the engine run smoother here, it actually has a byproduct that shows up in marketing.
Absolutely. Like when you really nail that, what we call the conversation track architecture, that engagement like methodology and model that we do so well, you see like 40% sometimes like improvement in lift. So you said that efficiency gets incredible. So you can dole out those efficiencies back into marketing to, like you say, double down, or you can, cut that in to say, well, if we're actually generating more, we can actually hire more salespeople, right, which will then help our even downstream conversion rates and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it becomes like a little bit of like a lot of good problems, you know what I mean? Like, and that you got to make some decisions on what are we going to do with this, like the outcome of this efficiency, because some people might want to fight over that, right? But like, and where they think it deserves to be, because it's like, oh, well, we're landing new customers. We need more customer success managers because we want to be able to drive more in contract lift or something like that, right? And they're all valid arguments to have, right? And the data should prove it out. But that's the idea, right? Is once you drive that efficiency, because what have we been trying to do forever, especially in marketing, right? It was always we make the joke, it's not even 50-50, but it's like 50% works, 50% doesn't. I don't know which one does, right? How are we driving that even to like 80? And we know what 80% works, right?
Right.
And that's like a big, like, this is what we've been driving, and we're getting better at that. That's the beauty of digital, right? So, but a lot of people still think in the old way with these new tools, and they're not putting it together. And we're just helping them put it together. And with the added thing of like the everything as a service economy, as the retention economy, upsell, with B2B being much more of like a subscription relationship and not just selling product, right? You need to get that tail end of the post sell in. So it's like digital and post sell. You put all this together. We've it's like we've got it. We have the technology. We can rebuild it.
Well, you've had the unique perspective to look under the hood at potentially dozens, maybe even hundreds of marketing campaigns. Some of them may even go into non-digital and back in the day, right? So are there any common themes that you see where are either strategies or channels that are underinvested by the companies that you've been helping?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's always, criminally underinvested is the idea of once someone is a customer, especially a new customer, I would say like content, engagement, nurture, support, and especially across a multi-channel approach to make sure that goes well. Marketing and sales usually throw that to support and success. And this was way before even success. I saw this being a real problem. And this has been going on for years, and it still is, because again, that focus becomes like marketing focuses on new leads, even if it's from companies they've been doing business with forever, and lead conversions. And then sales talks about sales accepted or qualified leads to opportunity conversions. And then they don't care anymore. Yeah. Because the day after a quarter, no one's in the office anymore, whether they're remote or not, right? Everyone's playing golf or doing whatever, right? And they think our work has been done for this time. But that's like, this is where the work starts, because you close the customer, and now you want to have consistency of engagement and message and feeling, and because look, even in B2B, people make emotional decisions with rational support, right?
Right.
So you've given them all that, and then you just check out, like, no, and then think, tomorrow I start on the next batch. No, it has to be more seamless to that. And marketing using digital can support that, right? So that's where I think the underinvestment is in that critical handoff, right? Everyone always talked about sales to marketing handoff. But what about, or marketing and sales handoff, excuse me. But what about after the sale? Like marketing should still have a role in that because they own kind of content, they own the delivery mechanisms, they own all these types of things for engagement. They need to build structural models that, like I said, that conversation track architecture. It's criminally underserved, so to speak, because that's, especially when it's like a SaaS product or a difficult or complex thing, support those people, or something that needs to drive, like adoption is critical, like getting more than the person who believed you and signed, or the 5 people that believed you and signed. Now you got to get their 2,000 employees to believe it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's never done well. And well, not never, but I mean, that's rarely done well. Yeah. And because people don't think about it because they're not incentivized to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that needs to change. So that's where I think that's the number one area where I really see like a criminal ignoring of the actual potential for that LTV, right? So that's the biggest thing I see.
Yeah, I love that because for a lot of our B2B clients over the years, one common theme, regardless of whether there was a single year contract or even a multi-year contract that was signed, was this period of buyer's remorse, which happens like right after the sale.
It's immediate. Yeah.
Yeah. And you sort of, if you don't come in strong in addressing that potential for buyer's remorse, they're already thinking about, oh, this wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And they're already thinking about the end of their contract, right? And so you have this sort of period, and it definitely overlaps with marketing because the marketing team should be thinking about their content creation, their content co-creation, and the earned media in particular, right? And the kinds of content that they put out there to address that sort of immediate at-risk buyer's remorse period that happens in B2B.
Yeah, there's a number of like what I would say like behavioral factors that make this critical. There's the buyer's remorse that you mentioned, but there's also just like the activation of like anything. I did a project a while back with a Scandinavian, like let's call it like the FedEx of Scandinavia, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to name them, but someone will probably figure who they are. But what they realized when we did the customer journey and the engagement analysis was the business guys were selling the contracts of like, yeah, you're gonna use our stuff and like, for anything in Scandinavia, use us, it's less expensive and blah, blah, blah. But they never engaged with the actual people, like the receptionists and the people who send and receive packages. Because there's digital like scanners and things that need to go and get installed and trained and say, look, you use this for these, and you might still be using FedEx, you might still be using DHL, whatever it is, but this is for this and that. And they were seeing like incredibly long gaps before somebody actually figured out to start using it, right? And it was like months. And when you're in a year contract and you're losing like a quarter of it, right? That's an incredible, that's a gap to revenue, right? And your recoup of the sales expense to go out and talk to these guys, it was incredible. And we said, how do you turn that into like a few days and structure that, right? And operationalize around that and start to get content out to and video and all this stuff to the people who aren't your decision maker, they're lower level employee, whatever you want to call them, people that, a salesperson might not even find on LinkedIn, right? But they go and they engage with those people and they get them onboarded in a proper way. And you're marketing to them to make sure it's like, this is when you use this product versus FedEx or whatever it is. And that like education, nurturing and understanding, because all too often in B2B, we have decision makers and there's like this much space between the actual users.
Right.
So that's why I talk about that post-sale, like persona analysis, pain point analysis, actual reason for engaging, and that message, that conversation track is usually very different than the one for like the lead and the securing the sign, right? The signature. So, and that's why it needs to be rethought. So some new skills need to be, some new muscle memory kind of needs to come in for marketers where they think about that post-sale of like, it's not about driving to a call to action like a form. But you can measure the effectiveness of it by how many click-throughs, how many views if it's video, and really thinking about how do we get the all the tiers using, loving, feeling like we're indispensable, right? And that gives you customers for life, and that gives you LTV, and that gives you lift, because if they like this one, your first choice for whatever else you got that is adjacent to it, right? For your upsell and cross sell. So it's, but nobody does that well, like I said. So that's the kind of stuff that, you really, once you get into it, even on a case by case basis, whether it's through our consultancy or you just start to talk to people, you really start to see these gaps are like incredibly prevalent, right? And there's easy ways to fix them because the technology is mostly there already.
Yeah.
If you're using Marketo, you've got a way to send that stuff out and get it right to them. If you're doing the right thing and you're asking, like, who are the people we need to talk to make sure this gets successful, because you need to get your champion, your high level champion, to help you get down in there, right? And you need to build these, success plans that aren't just a QBR of saying everything great, so it's got to be a little bit more involved.
Yeah, absolutely. One interesting thing I'd love you to get your perspective on is, one thing we noticed started in the middle of the pandemic, but it's continued after the post-pandemic with regards to the work from home revolution, is that, when we're doing marketing in B2B, particularly into the senior ranks, we're appending on home address information and marketing to the individuals who are influencers or decision makers at their home addresses, not just at their work addresses. And I would imagine that might have a similar ripple effect with regards to a go-to-market strategy, right? That now that people aren't necessarily all in the office all the time, they may be in 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever, your deployment strategies and your optimization of a, post-sale deployment would potentially have to adapt. So have you guys also had to sort of rethink some of your deployments because of the fact that people are distributed or working from home?
A little bit. I mean, what you wind up seeing if you're doing that kind of full journey thing is, it's like when you actually track the whole thing, one of the things that changes is like you don't get the physical close of like the 7 people in a boardroom, especially like high level B2B. That's kind of gone, but that just gets replaced by digital, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the really cool thing though. Here's where this gets better, right? So when I say adapt, you're actually improving, because what we've learned, right, is that when everyone's on a Zoom, they've had to actually click and accept the meeting. So now you have their email. Right. You've got a little bit of information that now you can go and augment and do a little ABM and do a little stuff, do a little research around them and actually start to do these persona build outs to understand them, and then maybe do a direct, really targeted campaign to somebody. Because how many times does the CFO pop into that meeting, but they're not on the meeting invite? So you don't even know who they are, right? And they come in and they're physically there, but you maybe get their business card, but who gets their business card? The sales guy, and he never actually puts it in the CRM, right? Or hands it to the, now that we're remote, he's never going to physically hand it to the marketing guy who's down in a cubicle down the street, so it's like, but what's really great now is like we've got all this ability to actually digitally track like who was there and how long they were on the call. You know what I mean? Like there's these really cool ways that we can now extract some information, extract some insights, and then actually go with that. And some of that now with Zoom and all that stuff is like that gets integrated into the CRM and then can be reported on, right? Or analyzed and thrown into AI. So, some of the things were difficult, I think, at first, and then we kind of started thinking, well, how do we take this challenge and actually turn it into an opportunity, or at least almost like something that we can do really interesting stuff with. So that's kind of how that flipped, right? Because we're like, the sales cycle isn't as kind of pat as it was, but the cool thing is that we're getting meeting notes automatically transcribed from Zoom and put into the CRM. Well, when were the sales guys doing that before? When it was an in-person meeting, you'd get like 2 sentences, right? So then marketing can take that and learn from that and start to do trend and pattern analysis and stuff like that and say, well, what are they saying about the product? And then feed that back to product. So it really wound up being like an actual boon of real feedback data in the pre-sale cycle that can actually help product, that can go back to sales training. Products like Gong are helping us with that and all that. So I think it really wound up working in our favor, because while everyone's kind of distributed, we're getting digital imprints of these touch points in ways that we weren't getting them before. So it's actually really exciting. I think it's actually helped us learn and get insights and trend analysis and other things, and also just connect with people that we might not have had their digital, might not have gotten their email, might not have gotten stuff because they were in the room, but they weren't really like known. So it kind of gives us a little ability to cheat a little bit,
Right. Whenever there's either a true recession or a fear of a pending recession, a lot of B2B sales cycles start to lengthen, right? Because they just want to kick the can down the road. So what has been your sort of general strategic guidance to the sales and marketing and overall teams, in adapting the go-to-market strategy and dealing with the fact that, the sales cycle might be longer?
Well, so, in my career, I've been able to like market, luckily, from like, during the big crisis of 08 and 09, I was in an open source company, right? So it was really easy for me because I could be like, we're open source. Like, we're not a SaaS company who can go out of business. Even if we went out of business, you'd still have the code, you'd have business continuity. So it was really good, right? That really helped us. We grew 80% year over year during those years. Because we were seen as a safe choice, right? So I've had that luxury, right? And then other times I've been, a lower cost challenger type thing. But one of the things where I take from the challenger kind of playbook is that like the risk of change. And again, if we're in B2B and we understand that we can get, and we should be getting, anywhere from 60 to 75% of our revenue from customers we already know, creating that motion and that conversation track around, you know us, you love us, hopefully, right? You trust us. Why would you, to save a few dollars, take a risk that could cost you a lot more, right? And creating a very, very organized and orchestrated playbook around that, like that challenger idea of like the risk of change. It's the irony of the challenger, right? Like when you're landing new customers, you're telling them you have to change. Like, it's this beautiful schizophrenia of the challenger sale, right? Like, where new customers, you're saying, what are you, crazy? Why you keep doing the same thing? And then when you have customers and it's a recession, you say, what are you, crazy? Why would you change? Right. But again, there's emotional reason, decisions that can be supported by these rational points, even if they seem contradictory. Right. And that's where I really move into in those types of like economic uncertainty times of like, and it's hard. It's a hard time for startups because they usually they're not the incumbent, and they're not those types of things. And they usually push on price, or they push on ease of use. But at the end of the day, people are like, I know what I know, and I don't want to take a risk. So I usually lean on that kind of side of the challenger sale and build some programs around that. And they tend to be effective because, again, that's why the deals are flowing, right? Because like we don't, and it's like, that's the whole thing. Is like, do you even have budget to change? Like, what's going on? Like, let's make sure we're successful. So you look like a hero inside this uncertain time by getting the most out of what you've already spent, right? And that's why success has to be aligned with sales, has to be aligned with marketing and customer support, right? So it's this full journey idea that should weather any storm, theoretically, right? Once you got that right conversation track, that right way of thinking, a recessionary environment shouldn't be any worse than anybody. You shouldn't fear it anymore.
Should folks be refining their go-to-market strategy? Just, the myth of the single decision maker has been dead for a long time, right? So, if things are, decisions are made by groups and committees, but sometimes, there are these people with veto power you didn't even know existed, and they're working from home, and it's like they're really hard to get to and know that they exist. So when you go and refine your sort of go-to-market strategy relating to all the parties who could end up not even just helping get the sale through, but to your earlier point, like they may be critical for deployment, right?
Yeah.
And so how have you had to change your strategy, since some of those folks may not be in the office as much, or they may be harder to track down?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to there's a little bit of like technology and making some assumptions, and then there's some that are like literally guided by the process, right? Where it's like, get your committee, like figure out who the committee is, right? And get them in the CRM so they can get into that conversation track that we talk about. Because once you understand, again, you go back and you figure out who in our industry or the typical, and it can be, kind of fuzzy bandwidth of like who is the decision maker, who's the signatory, if that's the CFO, and then, who's under there. And then, because I love building, really like financially pointed, like this is a safe choice stuff that just goes out like to your CFO. And again, what you talk about is, we talk about channels, we talk about all this stuff, and not everything needs to be quote unquote automated. It can be digital, but it doesn't have to be automated, because for those types of things, like the financial leader who needs to, you might not have an email drip campaign to that person, but what do you have? You have a selling and a marketing and sales motion where the account owner has 1, 2, 3 things that you say, hey, I want you to send this and share this with your CFO. and I'm going to walk you through it. And it could be a 2-page PDF at first, and then it's a 3-page, and then it's a 5-page, and it's selling the case, right? And then, oh, there's a section inside the digital proposal that tells the financial benefit, and it's for those people who, again, might not be engaged, but they're going to look at this stuff, right?
Right.
So thinking about that and how you leverage both technology and then digital, even if it's in manual, because you have that hand along and you go that, you might not be able to track if they actually opened it, but at least you're covering that base, and that's available. And if you are on a Zoom eventually and that CFO does pop on and like, oh, I never read it. And it's like, well, let me just open it up right now and share it on the screen and we'll walk through it, So the sales leader is, the account leader is ready. So we think about that a lot, because it is the committees are 5 to 7 people now on average. There is some consistency in that. So we kind of start with some templates when we start building out these multi-channel, multi-phase, multi-persona conversation track architectures. And it's not easy work, right? Like we wouldn't be a big consult, we wouldn't be doing really well if anyone could do it, right? And a lot of times marketers are too busy doing what they do every day, and sales is doing what they do every day, and C-level's doing what they do every day, that, we can come in and be that strategic layer for them, learn their business, build this out for them, tweak it, right? And it's about optimization, not like just testing if it works. It usually works, and then it's about optimizing it and rebuilding it. So we're dealing with that all the time. That's kind of what we do, is thinking exactly to your description, is building that multi-persona, multi-channel, multi-phase, kind of let's call it multi-pain point conversation track architecture for both pre and post sale. Because that's the idea, is like, who are those post sale guys? Because people, they just get ignored so much, but they're so critical for adoption, for driving, champion internally, for the cultural change of getting this to be something that the business leans on, right? Whether that's technology, whether that's manufacturing stuff, whatever it is, right? It's horizontal, right? You need to think this way in this new, customer lifetime value is everything economy, right? So yeah, this is what we do, right? You're kind of describing our DNA a little bit.
Great. Well, for those B2B marketers who are looking to sort of crush it for the remainder of this year and into next year, other than finding you on LinkedIn, any low-hanging fruit you recommend they implement right out of the gate?
I mean, honestly, it's first is, start thinking about, kind of revisit your customer journey and look at it and say, do we have structured engagement for the post-sale that might be owned by marketing, and shared in terms of what gets created with either success or even, product, that kind of thing, really start thinking about, reanalyze and reassess how you address the entire customer journey and how you orchestrate engagement around that. Like, how much does marketing say, yeah, this is a target of people that aren't decision makers, that are users? How many users? Just do analysis in your CRM or your contact database of saying, how many people aren't the decision maker? How many are users? Do we share the support database and put that into the CRM, so at least we know who are the actual users who are logging tickets? These are all really good things to start to get a much more holistic view of who is my customer, right? So a couple things like that. We provide this really cool assessment we call the GTMA. So this go-to-market assessment, and it's really quick, and it's really cool. And we use some cool technology and stuff like that to get it going. But the idea is really quickly analyzing against a number of things, like your organizational hierarchy and how that's aligned to the customer journey, the tech stack you use, the content you're using. And we do this quick assessment, and it's a really cool thing, because it's especially for, if your first 90 days as a CMO, trying to get a lay of the land, they use us for that kind of stuff, But if you're also saying something's not working, we're stuck, but we don't exactly know where, we can start to look at that, and you can say, hey, we've been using the same technology. We haven't really made a lot of investments. What, you can do all these 4 or 5, angles that I'm talking about, or just one, right? Wherever your sticking point is. So we offer those, we call them the GTMAs, go-to-market assessments. They're really cool. They're really fast. They're painless, but it's a good way to really start to kind of jumpstart a transformational effort, or get one moving a little faster, and kind of understanding where the biggest pain points and where your priority should be. So that's one thing that we do. But yeah, I mean, the customer journey stuff is really the most important one, because so many people did that 5-6 years ago, and a lot has changed since then.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Martin, for sharing your wisdom. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to continuing to watch you guys grow the business, and see you at the B2B Ignite next year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an exciting time, and yeah, we'll definitely connect at the conference, and hopefully before then. So, thanks again. All right.
Bye.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.